I'm going to take my mask off because I don't think I can really speak all afternoon properly. I encourage councillors, if they wish to leave them on too, take them off when they speak. I think we're reasonably spaced today in this format. So the purpose of keeping within the process of what the government has mandated at the moment, perhaps that would be best. Thank you. I declare the meeting open, and I've got to read the civic affirmation. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our judgment and ability for the advancement of this district and the betterment of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nations peoples. Thank you. Number one I have is apologies. I have two apologies, councillors. Councillors Yench and Councillor Hill are both apologies for this meeting. I have Councillors Bland, Councillor Arthur and Councillor Bowman in the chamber with myself. I have Councillors Leng, Councillors Rountree and Councillor Taylor is now online on Zoom, and I trust everyone even enjoys watching it on YouTube later or whenever. Acknowledgements, I have a brief one. Matt James, says your birthday here. Doesn't say how much though, it's only, but we don't need to know that. Councillors, this is a special meeting for the purpose of dealing with what I refer to as the council budget. So item number one, adoption of the 2021-22 business plan. Now, at this stage, there's been some discussion around if councillors later in this process vary a rating figure or a scheduled charge or something. That does not stop us, and in fact, the process says we must do it this way, adopt the annual business plan first. So if there's some changes made later, they will carry back into the business plan. So for everyone, that's how the process works. I have item two, it's called here, adoption of the 21-22, annual business plan. There is a recommendation there. Does someone want to move it? Councillor Bland is moving. And Councillor Leng is the seconder at this stage. Do you want to start with any comments, Councillor Bland? Or
no, given that any changes can be made, I'm happy.
Okay.
Through you, Mayor, I couldn't hear what Councillor Bland just said.
You said she was very happy.
Councillor Bland, bring down your
mic. I think the masks are going to be hard for the mics. That's where I think we're going to end up. Anyway.
What I'd said, Councillor, was that I'm happy with it as it is because changes can be made later on if necessary.
Can you hear that all right, Councillor Rountree?
Yep, I did hear that. It's a bit muffled, but I could hear it.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to ask councillors if they wish to speak to their mask down, I think. I've decided already.
Could you just
Councillor Arthur, yes.
Mr. Mayor, could you just explain a little bit more? If we accept this, we're accepting.
Can we have the mask off, please?
Can't hear me either.
No.
Because I've never been told that.
Take your mask off.
When you're talking.
Oh, okay.
I've sort of decided we cannot be heard over the mics to each other. We've got our masks on, so we're going to have them off for the purpose of speaking.
Okay, not a problem. Could you just sort out for me this problem? If we accept this now, we can still make many adjustments because I've got a lot of questions about some of the expenditure items in here. So I would not at this stage be able to vote to accept this, what budget has been put before us at this stage.
So the question is, in terms of expenditure or income items, is this the appropriate time for the councillor to discuss them?
Annual business plan comes first.
Yep.
And then if there's any changes in subsequent agenda items, they will then flow back into the agenda, into the ABP.
So, councillor, the way I'd read that is if you want to raise issues around expenditure items or income items that are not dealt with further as statutory charges or rates in the dollar, you do them now. You've got the floor.
Yes, so, sorry, what about the actual expenditure items? For example, I've had many people come up about the $500,000 increase in wages bill in this budget, and they are horrified that the council could even be considering an increase of $500,000 in the wages
Let's start
in this particular time.
with that one, and let's see if we can get an explanation from the executive officer or
I can start there.
yeah.
So there hasn't been a $500,000 increase, councillor. In terms of the salary, as you know, last year we had many unfilled positions. So as those unfilled positions turned into savings, we showed that in our particular budget. We've now brought the budget back up to reflect what the full staffing levels are, which is the $5 million mark. So there's been no change there. There's one new position, which is included in there. I suppose the other things that are included in there is an increase in superannuation, an increase in the EB, which is about 1.6 on average between the two of them. So that, along with bringing back into the budget positions like James's, which were contractors, which have moved out of the contracting area, there's been actually no change in the budget apart from those three things, which is the EB, the superannuation, and the one new position.
Could I just ask a
You've
further
got the floor at the moment. I know Councillor Roundtree will be next.
further question, and this has been given to me by ratepayers. This is the actual wages for 15-16 was 4.3 million. This is rounded off to near enough. 16-17, 4.3, 17-18, 4.3, 18-19, 4.5, 19-20, 4.3, 2021, average estimated to be 5.1, but latest budget estimate is 4.96. And then 21-22, we're talking 5.38.
Correct.
If that's $1 million increase in wages from 1920 to 2022.
Correct, councillor, and as I explained, budgets move up and down as vacancies do. At this point in time in the budget, we've brought it back up to reflect the full cost to council of salaries. Now, no doubt over the next 12 months, there'll be, as there has been every year, they'll come in and out of the budget at each budget review time. But the starting point is for the full FTE to be costed as it should be, as well as the increase in the superannuation, the increase in the EBA agreement, and the, what's the third one I had? And the one new position. So there's been no changes in the budget, except for those three things that are well known. There has been no new positions, and so it is just a regular movement of salary. There has been nothing else added.
So in other words, we've been saving $500,000 nearly a year in wages
And costing
on
us probably
on a $4 million job.
costing us a couple of $100,000 in contractors compensate.
Okay.
Over the last few years, we've struggled to keep a full complement of staff, and as the budget review has been unfilled, that amount in that budget can be reduced. So this simply brings us back to what we would have adopted.
This brings it back to the other question, is contractors, material and all those don't show those decreases or increases. And that's one of the things that the question that was asked at one of the finance meetings just recently was how much contractors were actually costing each individual area.
But that's not correct,
And
councillor.
we was told then that it was, too hard to work out. But going back over, just not this one is a, 5.62, was $5.6 million, wrong one. Where are we? Materials, and that was 7.36, it's gone back to 6.76. But if you go back for the last years up to 15, 16, there's no very big increase in those charges. And surely that would be when we have got consultants in, that's where their wages would be going.
So I can't comment on any budgets prior to when I started here. But as I said, there has been no changes in the number of staff on deck apart from that one person and two project people who are costed against capital. And apart from that, it's really just a progression of wages through the EB and the superannuation.
That leads to the next question from the ratepayers. The project officer, is he being paid out of project funds or is he paid by the? Okay.
So basically what happens is you have all your salary in one bucket, And then depending on what work they're doing, and it's not just that project officer, but then some salary is then capitalised against a particular project.
Thank you.
I'll go to councillor Roundtree.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that perhaps in future, in order to alleviate some of councillor Arthur's concerns, that our budget should always keep the FTE, regardless of whether the position is vacant or not, keep the full FTE figure in our budgets. And that way you won't see these large increases or decreases each budget time, because it will just remain static, other than the superannuation changes and enterprise bargaining agreement percentage increases as well. So I think this has been raised, this particular question has been raised probably 3 or 4 times. The same answer keeps getting given. I just think maybe in the future, let's look at just keeping that full-time equivalent in there regardless of the number, because it just keeps stumbling us every time. On the annual business plan, there's a table in there which talks about the grants that were, or the money we're spending on facilities, I think it is. And the Meningie Skate Park is referred to as the Coorong Community Skate Park. I'm just wondering, when was that decided? How was it decided? And who decided it? Because I would have thought that should have gone out for consultation.
I'm informed that that's not how it's been decided, councillor.
It was just
It says in the-
Mayor, it was really just to capture that it's a district one, but the name of it is far from, it's a bit like the pool. There will be consultation around that skate park.
Well, the pool one did go to consultation, and they made a decision about what the name would be, but we've always referred to it as the Meningie Skate Park until I saw this document, and now it's called the Coorong Community Skate Park. Just like that seems to just been added into the annual business plan.
So council hasn't made a decision around that name, probably don't even know if we would at this stage.
Then why was it changed in the annual business plan and not left at what it was, what we've been
Don't know.
referring to it in every other document?
It was really, I suppose, just to reflect that there has been discussion in the chamber that it is a district facility. I'm more than happy to put it back to Meningie Skate Park.
Well, until a decision is made, we possibly should. And with my comment about the budget, I'm not sure what you think about that, but I actually just think it might just get us over this hurdle in future.
That's through you, Mayor. We will still have to show the ebbs and flows of the salary in each of the budget reviews as it goes through the year, because salaries do change and positions become vacant. So it's a fluid environment. So we will keep the process of keeping what the salary is at the beginning of each budget, but there is always changes throughout the year to that number that is reflected in the budget review.
Yeah, so but the original budgeted amount that we have should be the full FTEs for the year, and then the ebbs and flows at each quarterly review can change, so long as that original number that is in the budget doesn't change.
Correct. Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, all you've got, I'm looking around the room for anyone else with questions around item number 2. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Actually, this relates to something just below the Coorong Community Skate Park. It's the Hill Street Tarlin Bend ceiling upgrades on page 26 of the LRCIP section, $140,000, and it has a little star along there which denotes that the project's completed. Well, I just drove up past Hill Street this morning and no project even started, Mr Mayor.
Through you, Mayor. That's just in terms of, in line with the funding agreements, the grants have deadlines and some of them have been extended. And so it's really one that should have been last year. It's been carried over to this year because of that very reason. So it's really just to denote that it hasn't been started. It's not in this. It was one that should have been acquitted last year. It wasn't started last year. It's now been carried over.
Matt, you got a
Thank you.
time frame yet on that one?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. The project's out to tender. Once the tender evaluation is undertaken, we will have a forward program on that. Being a road construction project with sealing, it's not wise to do that until the weather's a little bit drier anyway, which will increase the longevity of the seal. So I would suggest that the works will probably happen in the second quarter of this financial year. So between September and December.
Thank you.
Anything else, councillor?
No, that's all.
Any other councillors wish to have any more questions? Councillor Arthur, I think you've got
Yes.
your hand up again.
Yes, I'd like to question the $1.3 million for plant and equipment replacement. It went to the Infrastructure and Assets Committee. It was never recommended there. It's gone to council. It's never been recommended. It hasn't been accepted. And in fact, there's quite a lot of conjecture on some of these pieces of plant. So if we pass that budget, the staff can go and spend that $1.3 million on things, but when it still needs a fair bit of work to be done on what is actually needed. And that was the project that I've discussed the elected members. So, if we have to pass it and put that in, I believe there should be a caveat on it that all purchases must before they are finalised.
So, councillor, you'd be aware the last 2 years we probably haven't funded that area enough, but I'm going to refer to the director, Matt James, can you give us an outline of where that process is at? And
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
yeah, councillor Ling, quickly.
Yes, councillor Arthur's microphone keeps on dropping out. I don't know if the others are having the same problem.
Only his?
I can see his mouth working, but there's nothing coming out of it. So I was wondering if he's got a
No, that's not possible, councillor.
That's unusual.
He'll drop his mask fully off his face, but Matt,
No, it's nothing to do with the mask. He's talking and then it just disappears.
his mic's
Can you move it down a bit?
It's
on.
Yeah.
a bit dodgy.
Could be.
Move it down a tiny bit, councillor.
We'll try him again in a minute, but I'm going to look for an answer from the director around
Oh, hang on. Is that red light on?
noting that we had fail and perhaps potentially replacing in the last financial year. Matt, can you just give us a broad outline? And there is a infrastructure and assets fairly soon at Menengi, so just give us an outline of where we're at, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. So the plant and fleet renewal program for this financial year encompasses quite a few line items, as you're aware. The majority of them are items of plant that are significantly aged, well beyond what would be considered a useful life. Now, from a public sector point of view, the disposal and management of fleet is often quite different to what it would be in the private sector. For example, a tractor 22 years old, a backhoe 17 and a half years old, a vibrating roller 16 years old. They're the types of pieces of plant that we're disposing of and replacing this financial year. At the August Assets and Infrastructure Committee meeting, the process of how we're going to look to manage our plant fleet in the future to, eliminate our plant and fleet backlog will be discussed in detail, and an open discussion will be had about how we'll work through that going forward. The other pieces of plant in the program are passenger vehicles, construction utes. There's a grader which has got a significant capital value. There's a couple of pieces of plant that were initially identified for renewal in this plant and fleet program, which we've deferred, i.e. the float. There's also been 4 items of plant that we have disposed of without the intention of renewing, and that's 2 water carts, a large Fendt tractor, and the tow behind profiler.
So can I take it from that we're going to have a very broad discussion in the August meeting of Infrastructure and Assets Committee, and therefore that's where things will probably come from that. I don't know, Councillor, you take any reassurance from that, but the budget line's there to make some changes. And of course, the budget line does not include the trade in values in local government, which finds things confusing for most of us, I know.
And there's just one other point within the details that were given us for the budget. It's the triaxle water tanker P plant 705 is already sold, needs to be replaced. If it's been sold, where is the income for that sale? Because it's definitely not in the 2021 budget. It wasn't part of the $145,000 worth of excess equipment we sold.
It was actually.
It was,
On that
because we
sale.
discussed that well after that sale.
the triaxle semi.
We sold it with the tipper truck on, didn't we?
It was sold in the general auction of stuff late last year, whenever it was. And now it was then offset against purchase of a new grader last year. Nonetheless, a triaxle water tanker replacement is on the agenda at a variety of levels still.
Okay.
Any other questions, councillor? Councillor Ling, you were the second. Did you want to say anything? You need to unmute.
Sorry, not at this stage, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There's just one other question.
Yes, certainly.
From these questions that come from the ratepayers and residents. What is the actual figure? Originally, council allocated $200,000 for the skate park at Meningie out of the drought funding. There's all sorts of figures. Every time you pick up a piece of paper here, there's a different figure on it. It's now 310,000. I thought when the original staff come back with another 190,000, which was never actually passed. Why is it now 310,000? And, you know, people are not very happy that all this money has been spent at Meningie.
Been spent, yeah. I think.
What is the figure? That's
council made an allocation out of one of the many federal grant programs.
Yep.
Even I'm at the stage I can't remember. If someone could help me, we help.
One was the LRCIP and, sorry, Mayor, I'll have to find the other one, but it's been 2 lots of grant money and 1 lot of rate revenue that's in this budget.
So, for the purpose of the debate, what's the total expected expenditure on a skate park at Meningie?
Around about 300 grand.
So we're still around 300 grand is the expected figure, councillor. And most of that was allocated through one of those grant processes, which.
Well, it was one of those projects that was put up 200,000 for the skate park.
That's right.
They were going to put in for another 100,000, which we didn't get. And now the council's going to throw in another 110,000.
That's the budget process at the moment, yes.
And when you can build a very, very good one for 200,000. I suggest people go down and have a look at the ones that can out at Keith and Bordertown. Keith's in particular, $140,000.
Be that as it may, that's the line, the budget we're dealing with today. Right, any more questions?
No? I've asked and recorded. That's a good.
So the budget line for the skate park, which is, no, there's no building yet, is still 300,000. That's in total. If I have no more councillors to speak around this, I'm going to ask Councillor Bland to wind it up.
If I may, Mr Mayor, and I will just make a comment.
How about we take that, take the mask off,
I'm not a
councillor.
lover of taking the mask off, I have to say, but anyway.
I know you're a professional, but.
However, I will make the comment in relation to the Meningie Skate Park, in that there is an expectation now that those plans have been out. I would also say that there was some discussion in chambers at the time that we would only give 200,000 from, I think, RLCIP, and that council would actually be prepared to borrow. And that, I think, was noted by councillors that they would be happy to back a borrowing of 100,000, given that we're not actually intending to do that. I think that is a positive. The community are fundraising, or the children are fundraising to assist in facilities for that park. I just wanted to put that on record to bring us up to speed on it as well. Thank you, and I'm happy to close debate.
Thank you, councillors. So the recommendation is as it reads, councillors. Council formally received the written submissions in relation to the 21-22 draft annual business plan and budget, and the pursuant of the Local Government Act, we adopt the business plan as presented. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously, Ashley. Thank you. I move on to budget line number 2022 budget.
There's some awful paper rustling or something going on. Couldn't hear any of that, Mayor.
Moving to item 3, adoption of the 21-22 budget. You want me to read it out, councillors? Pursuant to the provisions of 7 of the Local Government Act 1999 and Regulation 7 of the Local Government Financial Management Regulations 2011, the financial budget for the financial year ended 30 June 2022, resulting in an estimated operating surplus of $193,000, be adopted as disclosed in the annual business plan and the 21-22 budget booklet in respect
Happy to
of
move that
pages
way.
1 to 6, and the notes are provided as information only. You're moving that way, Councillor Roundtree?
Yep.
Thank you. For a seconder. Councillor Qualman is the seconder. Councillor Roundtree, you want to speak to it?
No, I think we've gone over this quite a lot already, and I think we've arrived at a good position, so I'm happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Qualman, any comments?
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree. It's been pretty comprehensive and explanatory. Just a slight increase and a little increase in charges, but it looks like it's the main important thing that the community can afford it. So that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you. Any other councillors for or against?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make
Arthur, yep.
a couple of comments on this budget.
Yep.
One of the things that we're doing is we're not abiding by our own plans, although we haven't accepted the plans recently. They were not accepted at the last infrastructure and asset planning meeting, the roads asset managed plan and all that sort of thing. For example, the road asset management plan says that we should be spending $1.6 million a year on sealed road upgrades, 1.8 on unsealed, curbs and channel 224,000 and footpaths 79,000. Now, our budget here, we're spending 778,000, and the actual plan itself, in 20 years at that same funding, we're going to have 80% of our roads are going to be in very, very poor condition, and that's out of the plan. So the unsealed road portion is getting a fair bit of grant money. And one thing that was stated by the CEO before this was we would not take any grant money and use it to prop up our unmade roads. Now we have straight away this year, because in the $500,000, we've got $362,000, which is Karkuma Road, which has been taken out of the grant money and put in there. So, you know, like all these grant money was supposed to be extra on top of what we should normally be doing. So that's why I'm very disappointed in the way this has been done. Because the first one, if you remember, the last couple of years, it has been the process of the last councils, unbeknownst to the members, to take any grant money extra received and take it out of what council actually should have been committed to put into the roads.
So, Councillor, when we talk about grant money, we're not talking about bags grant or the standard road grant. We're talking about over and above money, and in local roads and community infrastructure round 3, you're right, you've allocated 380-something thousand from that process to roads, and it can go to any road, but it's been allocated there to Karkuma. And as you know, budget's built around this council receiving through the Special Local Roads Program, a separate program, 766,000 to seal 2 kilometres of Karkuma Road and start the widening back towards Tintinara of the balance. I think in the broadest sense, if you look at the budget, the increase in dollars spent growing, secret that we need to continue to work on A, the amount of dollars we spend in that area, but B, the efficiency, getting the best value for the dollars. And with a new director in place, and as you've noted earlier, perhaps some different machinery coming on board, subject to the next month's meeting. I take your point. This council over the last two and a half years has received a large amount of grant money, of which up till now, up till this round 3 of LRCIP, we've chosen to spend on basically community facilities and some to sporting clubs and not our own things, except in the case of now 3 streets in Tailem Bend. So I think we now have the choice in this last program to put it all towards roads if we wished, and at this stage, and you'd be aware that we have a choice that it's listed here as for the following year, another amount of, same amount of money, 750, and we'll have that choice again. So in terms of how much money this council, what our appetite is for sealing of unsealed roads, which is probably improving a capital base, we probably need to have a broader discussion in the next few months around our ambition there, because we need to probably, and I'm looking at Matt Jones, start lodging our applications for next year, special local roads around that. There is 4 or 5 roads in this district that feature in that list. That's Carcooma, Heinrich, Coorong 7 Mile, Poltallic and Yamali Road. I had the fortune or otherwise to drive over the Yamali Road, and it goes to show how much it rains over at Menengi. It's back to its usual condition, and I'm not saying that's perfect. So I think we need to do quite a bit more work, and now Matt's on board, we will, around what's our ambition around how much we should be spending on roads to either maintain our present position or improve over time. And I'd always hope we're improving. But your point is partially right in my view, but when will these extra grants end? I don't know. I know.
Well, the latest one we got is 1.53 million or 1.5 million. And that is what we have taken Carcooma Road out of.
Yeah.
And now that's supposed to have been a budgeted item. When previously it was presented as a budgeted item. This only came along later. And so we've taken it out of there.
Well, we know
we're using their money instead of our own, what we have generated. And that's, and that's what's been happening. And that's why in a lot of cases we didn't know. No member knew that. So, it's only since we've been able to get more detailed down the bottom details of what goes on, you've been able to find these things in. And I thank Bridget for being able to give us those figures, whereas before it was like extracting the truth.
So as you know, our new financial system comes into place over there, and hopefully within 6 to 8 months we will have really good figures we can work off. No particular secret that we've struggled to have really reliable figures for some time. But it'll depend on the appetite of elected members around how much they want to spend on improving asset over maintaining asset, given the opportunity we have with special local roads in particular, which is a more stable form of funding in this state than one-off federal grants subject to. Any other questions?
No, I would like to commend the new finance officer. This is the most comprehensive financial statement we've ever had since I've been on council.
I'll take that as very kindly, because the council is always very diligent in this area.
Through the mayor, the project to devolve this information was a combination of the CEO and myself. So I can't take all the credit.
Neither can the CEO because their mic's in the air. So, okay. Any other councillors around item 3, adoption of the budget? Councillor Coleman.
I'm allowed to speak again, Mr. Mayor.
You're on a different item. Yep.
Thank you. Just to alliterate what Councillor Arthur said, I totally support what you brought up. And is it right that we're doing a ramp or AMP workshop soon, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that will help steer us with those and get on top of those issues.
The long-term financial plan follows adoption of this budget, but to do the long-term financial plan, we as elected members need to give some guidance on how much capital we wish to put into improving assets. That's not only roads sometimes,
Yes, that's good.
but particularly roads in our scenario.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Roundtree. Thank you, Councillor Ling. You had that canoe photo again. Councillor Roundtree, you're going to close if no one else is speaking.
I close.
Thank you. So I'm on item 3, adoption of the 21-22 budget. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 4, adoption of the 21-22 valuation. There is a recommendation there, councillors. Someone wish to move that way? Don't rush me.
I'll move.
Councillor Arthur, you're moving. The adoption of the valuation. For a second, Councillor Bland. Yeah, I see, councillor. You watch one screen at a time. Councillor Arthur, you usually want to comment on the evaluation?
Just a quick, from when the original budget was worked out until this one, has there been much change in the valuations?
Through the Mayor, there's been $26 million in capital valuations, mainly in commercial properties.
Increased or decreased?
Increase.
That's not for the purpose of rating, or that will be included?
Yes.
We've adjusted the rate in a dollar in accordance with the rating policy, so that the earnings and the rate yield encompasses the correct valuations.
Correct ones. Okay, does that answer your question, councillor?
Yep. Thank you.
I'm looking, anyone else got any questions around this item? Being none, you're closed, councillor. 4, which is the council pursuant to the provisions of the Act, council for rating purposes for the year ended 30th of June 2022 adopts the most recent Valuer General's capital valuations totalling, it's a lot of money.
Ian.
2 billion, I think that means $229,375,050. Is that correct?
Can I just, through the Mayor, can I just through the Mayor, congratulate Leanne on the job that she's done in ensuring that we have not had a confusing situation in the past where we're not consistent with either the ABP or the budget. Amazing job.
Thank you, Leanne, as our rates officer. She's in the back of the room. Given the changes in rating policy and many things this year, she's done a fantastic job. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Declaration of differential rates and the fixed charge. Councillor Taylor, you moving that way or?
No, I'm not. I've got a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
So my concern is with the recent COVID restrictions and no doubt future COVID restrictions and ongoing COVID restrictions, which seem to affect principally small business. I'm concerned about the commercial rate. I know that the industrial rate is lumped in with it, but I'm concerned about the commercial rate coming in at 120, 20% increase hit in the first year. Is it possible to change that to 110, 110% for the first year, and then going up to 120% in the second year? How do we do that if the council's agreeable?
How that would be handled.
Through you, Mayor, of course, anything's possible. We did some calculations on any changes to any of these rates in anticipation of these types of questions. And for this particular one, it's around about the $30,000 mark. And our recommendation, if that's the way the council wants to go, then we would just take that off the top of the surplus rather than rearranging and recrafting all of the rates in the dollar across all of the ratepayer categories. We think that would be the simplest way to go.
Councillor,
So
why are you go on.
How would I get that through then? Do you want me to bring a motion?
You've got the floor, and I'm interested in you referring to only commercial or commercial and industrial.
I've got concerns over vacant land, obviously, because that's a 25% increase on previous years. And a lot of the vacant land would sit in Wellington East, where they're already being hammered with water charges and CWMS charges for services they're not connected to. So that's a big concern. We can't just automatically assume that everyone that owns land down there is land banking, because people have possibly purchased land with a view to, because it was so affordable when it came onto the market, it may have been purchased with a view to developing, in a couple of years, or while they're busy selling an existing property. I know of some people who are moving from Sydney who did exactly that. They've purchased the land, but they've had to wait to sell their property.
I'm going to bring you to 2 points you've raised. One is you're talking about vacant land and the rate and the dollar going up, but does that take account of the effect of the dropping of the fixed charge, your discussion around 25%?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying about the fixed charge and whether or not it evens out.
Yeah, so I'm not
I
going to
am going to voice my concern over vacant land.
Yeah.
However, I do want something brought in for commercial and industrial over a 2-year period, irrespective of the drop in fixed charges.
If you were still of the mind to move the recommendation, because you have the floor, you could move that in the year we bring that in a value of 1.1 instead of 1.2. Is that what you'd like to do for this year?
Yes, it is.
So that would be, which point here?
B.
Point B, 3B. We haven't got that calculation of the exact cents and dollar at this point, have we?
You may, and I'll check with Ash, but I would make that just a 4 with a side amendment. It doesn't change the character of the whole thing, but we'll just say that with the commercial, we would bring it in over 2 years. Change.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Not yet, until I just get whether you'd add a 0.4 to your recommendation, councillor, that in relation to the 5 commercial industrial categories, that be phased in over 2 years. Is that what you'd like? That increase?
Yes.
That rate in the dollar? We just get some words around that, please, really, just to tidy that up. I want people to be really clear. I think some of us know what we're talking about in this. Proposed out of our rating review to move the commercial and industrial rating category to a value of 1.2 of standard. What you're proposing is in the year we're 21, 22 to only increase it to 1.1 in the first year, which would probably mean a considerable amount more of those ratepayers would probably have a rate reduction given the reduction in the fixed charge.
Yes,
Our modelling at the time showed I think nearly half the ratepayers would have had a small rate reduction anyway, but you're proposing that as a 0.4. I'm just awaiting more information around this.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
No.
Yeah, we'll have a question in a minute, councillor, but I'm going to wait to get a motion,
I'm
actually.
just on the wording,
Are you looking for a seconder?
Not yet.
No?
on the wording of the next year. We need to be careful of the wording for next year.
Or maybe we just leave it. Over 2 years. With that, just 2 years, leave it at that. The reduction as it relates to each.
You rate the dollar at 110 is 0.4019 cents.
Sorry,
196. Well, you can just pay 4020 if you want.
Way I would understand this was it wouldn't change the Well, no, won't change the distribution. What it will change, the council will make, I think it was a figure a minute ago of approximately $30,000 less from not increasing it in year one. It would still wouldn't change that council's intent in year two was to move to 1.2. Councillor Taylor, you were, I think, the mover still, or you're going to be, is that correct?
Yes.
So Councillor Taylor's moving the recommendation, councillors, as it reads. Point B would change the figure of 0.4385. That would be removed, then it would go to 0.40196. Councillor, I've got her on the screen. Councillor Roundtree.
Happy to
Are
second that.
you waving in the sun or is the light still bright? Yes.
Oh, it can't be, right. I've got my blinds down. Yes,
Yes,
I'm happy to second it.
You're the seconder. All right, sorry. I've got councillors Arthur, then Bland. I think you've got to, yeah.
Mr Mayor, I just wonder if we've actually done the figures on what it's going to do. I looked at this because I was told that, some people weren't happy with that. 5 people in Tidanara, the business accounts there, and all of them are getting a rate decrease. You've got to have a block that's worth about $450,000 to break even because you're getting your fixed charge dropped by $150 and the rate increase. So the valuation at, like 0.438 on is about a $450,000 block to make it $150 reduction. So I can't see where the point is. And all we're doing, are you going to change all the rates for the whole lot or you're going to increase the deficit?
Well,
Reduce the surplus.
Yeah, reduces.
we are proposing a surplus, councillor. I know that's taken a few years to get to us, but we are
Surplus
proposing
now.
a surplus in this budget. So we would reduce the surplus, which was at 193 by approximately $30,000. It may be seen to be noting that COVID's re-emerged, I think, as an issue. I think 6 months ago we thought we may have been on top of it in this state. It'd be fair to say that our small businesses at different levels in this community it is affecting them quite severely now. I suppose this would be seen as a acknowledgement of that. Councillor Bland.
I think probably you've said fairly much about what I'm going to say, and that is that the small businesses and industrial businesses all been affected, irrelevant of size. And I agree with Councillor Taylor that we should take that we should note that. I'm not saying they shouldn't go up in the future, but at this point in time, they're getting a hit. We've just had a week. They're getting a hit where they're not being, many of the businesses are closing, whether it be industrial or not. Many of them are now being shut down. Not a bad thing to do, but we should acknowledge it.
Okay, any other councillor wish to speak for or against this recommendation? Item 5. 2, 3. That's nearing closing. Councillor Taylor will close.
Closed.
So councillors, item 5, the recommendation has that one change, just to reduce that cents in the dollar to 0.40196 for all the commercial and industrial.
Get on the screen, please. B.
Oh, she's
Sorry.
0.4020. It has been rounded up. Has been rounded up. We'll go with the round up. Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those in favour? Councillor Arthur, I'm not quite seeing where your hand is positioned.
Well, I can't believe,
I'm going to allow you to vote against it if you want it.
I'm going to, yeah.
Right, those against? So that is carried 6 votes to 1. Councillor Arthur voted against that. The other 6 councillors, Councillors Simmons, Bowman, Bland, Taylor, Roundtree and, yes, Councillor Ling, voted for that motion, so I declare that carried. We move on. Item 6. Declaration of the Community Wastewater Scheme Service Charges. Councillor Qualman. Moving that way. Is there a seconder? I'll continue to look for a seconder. It'll be Councillor Bland. Thank you. Councillor Qualman, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just having a brief read over it, and in line with the Gapling's report, with a slight increase, not a great increase, or something the community can afford. I think 1.5% was recommended. So yeah, that's why I'm. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Arthur, you?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering when. It's been pushed for 2.5 years now. Council will actually start charging themselves for this use, which is how it should be, so that everybody within the council area is paying for it, not just the people that are entitled to the CMS scheme. And for the council to say they can't work it out, well, there's something wrong, because I reckon give me an hour and we can work it out. There's 5 in Tindanara that are connected. There are just buildings that we own and run, so I can't see why it can't be done.
Councillor, as you know, we've got on top of several other subjects in the last 6 months. This is a time thing, and you'd also be aware that the Local Government Association is doing a bit of a different review in this area. Not that that should affect that. The CEO has indicated to me that we'll get to it. By she says by Christmas, I'm going to say by this Christmas.
Don't say it's a mirrors. We're looking into it.
Oh, no. Sorry. So you, Mayor. No, we're not looking into it. It's just, it is on the list of things to do. It is just in terms of a priority. We haven't got to it yet.
And through the Mayor, can I make a comment that we've actually, through the diligence of Leanne, been able to identify the properties that weren't charged. She uncovered a parameter that was in the rate system that wasn't activated in 1920. So that brought us up. Yep. That.
In 1920.
So.
Financial year 2019-20. Sorry.
Yeah. So we are working on refining things.
Might have been a few anomalies. I might make the point right now that in this budget to the councillors and ratepayers, several other bits and anomalies that will be hopefully ironed out in this year's process. So if you're a ratepayer and you think something's really gone awry with our system, don't be afraid to ring up council and find out why there's a difference. And we may have still made a mistake, but we've been looking for anomalies for quite some time. So, okay.
Mr Mayor, just one other thing. I notice in the budget here, we haven't got a carryover figure in 2021. There will be a carryover figure to the reserve of quite considerable amount because of the fact we've spent very little capital this year. I notice we've got the $225,000 in there for capital expenditure next year. So there's $850,000 or $870,000 in the reserve account now. And it amazes me that Galpins, who, put that wonderful scheme together with us, are also the auditors or the accountants for the Tatiara scheme, which they're quite happy with, where they pay $350 a year. And yet they're proposing that, we'll be paying $1,000 a year in 10 years' time.
Hopefully we won't get that far. So the question is, is there an allocation from this year to the reserve?
Sorry, through you, Mayor, there's an allocation out of it of $225,000.
And
James.
through the Mayor, the key to this is the BR3 forecast. Bearing in mind when we have done this budget, we've taken a positive step to ensure that all the reserves are cash backed. So I think that should be acknowledgement. Once the annual accounts are finalised, I'll be in a better position to give a more response.
The councillor, we're working towards actually having money in a reserve, yes. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor, there's 2 councillors. Councillors Taylor, then Ling. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, I won't be voting for it. Along with Councillor Arthur, it's been year on year of requesting further information around this, especially for vacant lots. The charge was put up to make it equal to occupied, which means that people who don't have properties on their vacant lots are still carrying the cost of the system when they're not using it. So I don't agree with it. I'm not going to continue to vote for it until it's changed, until council starts charging for its own use. We're effectively putting it up for those ratepayers who may, for example, next year after a review get a reduction, which just seems ridiculous. So I'm not going to support this bit.
Okay, councillor Ling.
Yes, I was going to say the same. The variation of $28 between an occupied unit and a vacant allotment doesn't cover the cost of what council is collecting from an unserviced vacant block for the pumping of septics. I know we've got to cover our costs, but we really need to sit down and talk about this and work it out properly. We've been running around the tree on this for quite some time now, and it still hasn't been ironed out. I'd be voting similarly.
Okay. Anyone else, councillor Bland?
I have a question in relation
Certainly.
to a process on this. And I am wondering, given some of the comments in the room, whether or not we could move forward with this, but with a review and to address some of the issues that have been brought up, hence the vacant lots, etc., with a review by the end of the second quarter to be able to address it.
Okay.
I know it goes out in the rates, but
You're the seconder of the motion. You wish to just add with the permission of the mover.
Whether or not we could add a maybe or another dot point that we review this at the second with an adjustment if necessary. I take the points of councillors that we have had this on the books for some time, but I don't think we can hold up process of moving forward, and we haven't got the discussion around that now as to how this will go through. And that's the other part of my question. If this doesn't go through, what does happen perhaps to the CEO, Mr. Mayor?
So through you, Mayor, I'm just looking at the rates officer for one question before we move on. My understanding is we have some of the council buildings within the formula and some not yet.
The majority of the council-owned buildings have been included in this calculation. It's where the ones that need...
Sorry, we can't hear anything she's saying.
Yeah, I just... Yeah. Leanne, just sit to find a mic that's live, please.
Stay there. So what Leanne is saying, council, is that the majority of buildings, council buildings, are within the formula. The ones that are out, Leanne was just going to explain what the ones that aren't in there yet are.
Yeah, the ones that aren't in there that need a little bit more work done to them is where we've got multiple units, like on the one assessment. So, and that just requires a little bit more work. But the majority of the calculations of the CWMS have already been undertaken and are included in this calculation.
And sorry, Mayor, through you, one more question, Leanne. So once we put in the remaining ones, will the impact across the board be material or immaterial in terms of the dollars charged?
It'll be immaterial.
And
Before, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask Leanne one question? Regarding the per units, have we looked into that? There is legislation going through that, you know, like councils will not be able to adjust it or anything like that. But the question I've asked a couple of times is the number of units that some of these places are being charged, and I haven't had an answer for it, but according to the Ombudsman, I should be able to get an answer. So I wonder if we're also looking at that.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm looking at right now, is where you've got multiple units that are required for each assessment.
And that's not only council, that's everybody.
That's everybody. Yep, that's what I'm undertaking at the moment, but it does take a little bit of time. And I think, as it was alluded to before, that by the second quarter, we should have all that information finalised.
no, I'm coming back to mover and the seconder adding a point 2 to the recommendation that further report around.
I get clarification. The second part of my question is, can we actually adjust it after the second quarter? Do we actually have the ability to do this? Because this goes out on...
I would suggest, I don't know, we'll better make an adjustment, but my problem would be if we didn't adopt it today, where that goes within the rating process in general.
So well, it's an annual service charge. So it would have to be adjusted then at the next budget, which is this time next year again. So you would, it
Okay,
would
so you
stand.
can't actually adjust.
But it might bring to crystallise the issues that councillors have been pursuing for some
Put
time
it in as the
around
second quarter.
units and those sort of things. But I'd probably say to councillors, we need to probably adopt something today from the budget's point of view. We're in the back end of that cycle, unfortunately, anyway. So you're entitled to vote against it, but I'm not quite sure what I do at that point around this process.
Mayor, what happens if this doesn't get up today? What is the consequences of that?
Rates.
So
Problem.
the recommendation would become that you remain as is with the previous year, but that would not address the issue, which this partially does, of making vacant allotments somewhat less than occupied units. So one of the things we're trying to deal with as an anomaly in this process is to start, we've been advised that is probably not how it should be, that we treated all units before as exactly the same. Councillor Ling noted there that, you know, is there only a, $28 difference there, councillor? I should never do figures on the run. Yeah. Difference in between serviced and unserviced allotments, but that's where the bit extra work comes from. And I think it also reflects on the process the LGA's been through, which has not been sorted out due to COVID, of course, in the last 18 months around some of this prescriptive decision making. So if this was not to get up, and I'm still awaiting the mover and seconder may want to add a line, we would probably take it that the previous year's charge was the one. I'm looking at this mover and seconder was pretty keen on adding a second dot point on.
I think my dot point is around, and I'd be interested in the
No mask. I find that mask frustrating.
I think my first I have a question to Leanne is, would the second quarter be adequate time frame for a report to come back to council so that we are well aware before the next time around to finalise this process?
So Leanne's
thank you,
nodding
Leanne.
that would be possible.
So then I would like to provide that a report be provided by the end of second quarter review,
End of the second quarter budget review.
please.
Around, what's the what? Around
Charging of the full complement of council's
Yeah.
assets.
around council, charging of council properties and units thereof.
Multiple units.
Multiple
thereof,
units.
because it's not just council properties coming up in this one. From
Exactly,
what I'm
councillor.
understanding from Leanne, there are a number of things in here as well. So I'd like to see it all finished by the second quarter, so we know exactly what we're doing by next year.
Charging, I'm going to help Ashley out, charging council.
And multiple.
Council connected facilities, please, Ashley. And multiple unit, is that the right word? Properties. Everyone understand the intent of that proposed amendment, which is coming from the seconder? I'm looking at the mover. Is he happy with that?
Can you reread it out for me, please?
Yeah. So if you look at the second dot point would be that a report be provided to council by the second quarter 21-22 budget review regarding charging council connected facilities
I
and
can't hear anything.
multiple unit properties. You can't hear anything. Hello? Hello? Can councillors Taylor and Ling hear me?
Microphones on.
Yes.
Yeah, no
I can
problem.
hear you now. I just couldn't hear you before.
Right, I'm going to try again. That a report be provided to council by the second quarter 21-22 budget review regarding charging council connected facilities and multiple unit properties.
Through the mayor, it won't be a budget review, it'll be just an exercise because it, as the CEO has indicated, it's an annual fee. You can't refund it.
Does give a time frame around when we're driving towards after some years, I can assure you. Councillor Roundtree, did you get that?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Councillor Qualman, are you happy with that dot point two? You are the mover.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I take on board what the other councillors have said. That does make sense, and I take on board what our accountant says too, that, and our CEO, that if this gets up, it'll be over 12 months or that it happens. But I'm more confident of the motion now, saying thanks to Councillor Bland on the last point that we have a second quarter, we have a budget review regarding council connected facilities and multiple unit properties. That's got a bit more oomph to it. Thank you.
Okay.
If I may.
Yes, councillor Lang.
Sorry, we're still not addressing the vacant lot allotment issue.
So I'm actually going to ask Leanne, come back up again. Is the vacant lot issue a little bit still tied up in the legislative change that the LGA has been working on, or I'm looking at whoever?
No.
Got about 4 officers, so it's not really.
No.
Not. He's not. Miles declares he's not an expert.
What I could suggest, Mayor, but it's with the local government reforms and SCOSA coming into the picture.
Yeah.
The scrutiny of this particular charge will be higher than it's ever been over the next probably 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Perhaps Councillor Lang, yeah, I take on board what you're saying, perhaps one step at a time, but I would like to see how different councils would differentiate the true cost between vacant or occupied. And just on my memory of reviewing adjoining councils, most of them had a $30, $40 difference in their charges between the two, which is somewhere near where we are. I think we should, you're right, we need to move on that too, but perhaps one step at a time.
Mr. Mayor, I think it was the original concept of that was that the only thing you're not getting is a pump out. The only thing you're not getting is a pump out. So they'd worked out some figures on what it costs to pump them out on a contract basis, which is normally here over 4 years when we do the various areas, and that was what came off. So that's probably what it costs us to, for a contract to do the pump out, $28.
All right.
Every 4 years, $25 a year.
There you go. So I think that'll come up as part of a review fairly soon by the sound of that to me. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, which is why I'm still not going to vote for it, because we're going to change it, and without any real movement on the reasoning behind it, the actual true figures, the units, and everything else we've been trying to get movement on in the last 2.5 years, and we're just going to change it just to potentially change it again. So whilst I especially appreciate that you're trying to drop the charge for the vacant blocks, I'm fearful that we're just dropping it as a token gesture, and we're not looking at and Leanne, in all fairness, has not had time to do a full review or to look at all of the properties or to bring in line those that haven't paid and should, or whatever it is that's going on in the background. So I'm going to vote against it, because at the moment I would just stay as we are for another year.
Okay. Who have I? Getting near the end. I've got a varied motion, councillors. I'm looking for anyone else that wishes to speak. Councillor Roundtree.
I'm just really confused. I think both the idea of moving forward is good, but I also take on board what Councillor Taylor's saying, that this could be just seen as a token effort, and will anything actually change? So I don't know. Do we need more time on this? I really don't know how to vote on this one, to be honest.
Well, councillors, it's not a token effort, because some people will pay less than they may have if there was no variance. I put it to you that the load of the cost of the system has been taken up more so than otherwise by the people who use the system.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, while it's not to everyone's satisfaction, does try at least to put another time frame on it.
That's right. It somewhat drives the process. I'm nearly at the end. Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Qualman, you to close this.
Close the debate, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So everyone's aware of the recommendation, and point 2, which has been added by the mover and seconder, is a report be provided to council by the second quarter 21-22 budget review, which is usually in February, if I'm a good guesser, regarding charging council connected facilities and multiple unit properties. Okay, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? All those in favour? I'm still on the favour lot. Those against? So Councillor Taylor voted against it and all the other councillors voted for that. That is carried. Thank you. 7, 2021-22 water supply systems service charges. Recommendation, councillors. Don't rush.
Can we have the same?
You have what?
Can we have the same charge?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
SA Water.
I think the Deputy Mayor is making the point that SA Water charges considerably more for the water. 4 times, I mean, it's more than 4 times, I can guarantee you, if you're a rural producer. And
That's only the service charge 4 times.
yeah, the property charge is somewhat similar at about $68.75 since I paid a bunch of them yesterday per quarter for a SA Water supply charge.
I'm sure.
You move that way. Councillor Taylor, I hope you're going to second it.
I was just going to say that you can drink SA Water. You can't drink this.
Right, it's true.
And I hope you're seconding out of that, though. I'm writing your
Yes,
name.
I'll second it.
And I would make the point while we're on this subject, as you know, I think the gremlins in the peak water supply pressure system are probably resolved now. Looking at Matt, we haven't had any complaints in your time, have we? They took some.
12 months.
And it is one of the projects that the leadership group is going to take on, is to continue looking at how we can provide a lot better water to East Wellington. We're well aware of this being an area which we need to do a lot more work. You're the seconder, Councillor Taylor. Anyone speaking for or against? There being none, you're all closed. Tank. Councillor Arthur. Closed. Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Number 8, declaration of the 21-22 curbside waste management charge. There's a recommendation there at $337 per bin service. Councillor Qualman, you're moving that way or asking? Moving. You're a seconder? Councillor Arthur. Any discussion around that? Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Looking at my rate charge, it's about only a $7 increase, so quite affordable, I feel.
Yeah, thank you. And I might add, I'm looking at that now, I think the region is looking at a joint tender for this service. At this stage, we run our own contract, but the region, and we'll see if that advantages us or disadvantages us and make our decisions from that. And what would be the next few months, we'll learn that, Matt. Is that a fair comment? Yeah.
By the end of this calendar year.
By the end of this calendar year, we'd be looking to see what we can gain out of a regionally based service to reduce costs. Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Mayor, we are going to have discussions in future, are we, on recycling and food waste and how we deal with that, and perhaps a hard waste collection at some point?
Councillor, Gremlin got into your system in the second half of what you said to us. Just try.
Are we going to?
Yes, that'll be fine if that works. Keep going.
Are we going to have a conversation around hard waste collection and recycling of compostable food waste?
Not in this motion, but I think in the regional contract offering, food waste in the green waste, what we call the green waste, would be a consideration. You'd be aware this council at the moment uses our green waste to cover our Tail and Bend dump site, which has been closed for several years. With any luck, our requirements to do that will finish around the same time as the possibility of going to the food waste and green waste process. Then we'll have a chance to review our other services around that. Does that answer your question?
It doesn't. I'm just looking at the increase. I know that council is trialling reduced hours, so I'm surprised that there is an increase. Actually, I assume that the increase is down to the contractor. Is
I would
that
imagine
correct?
would be part of the contract, which has been probably rolled over a couple of times now, which would be the standard contract position.
Does that mean there's been an increase in the contract cost?
About the contractor cost.
Sorry, I missed the question.
About the contractor cost.
The changes to the rate is about the contractor cost. What I was going to say, Mayor, was that some people will actually get a reduction in this arrangement because we've recognised, remember in the policy we discussed, I think at the last council meeting or the one before, depending on where people were with their bins in the bin bank, up until now we were charging everybody the same, but we have now have a scale of reduction for those people. So there will be residents who will actually get a decrease in their charges as a result of this.
So, Councillor, as you'd know, when I talked before about anomalies in the Act or in certain acts, it's been felt that we couldn't charge the full fee for people that are over the distances as is in the agenda. That's the view of the management here. We're not allowed to do that in the Act. So that's why for some people that have been taking their rubbish to the route, they may get quite a reduction down to zero. I don't think that's a lot of services at this stage.
Through you, Mayor, I think it's about 60 from memory that we've contacted. Yep.
So the challenge will be that when some people work out that they may not have to pay, they may want to put a bin on the route. We can debate the economics of that, but it's in the Act. Getting rubbish out of the community is probably a positive. Councillor, you finished, Councillor Taylor. We had the same technical issue with your voice again.
Okay.
You're finished?
Yes, I am finished.
Councillor Bland.
I think probably most of it's been said, but it was really about the numbers, as the CEO has indicated, around the changes with the 5Ks, et cetera, but also do we have capacity in the new contract to pick up the potential others who then may come on as free at the end of this? Particularly, there's certainly some multiple property users out there in that, probably in that case.
Through you, Mayor, we would have to negotiate with our contractor, but I don't think that it would be a significant amount that would.
Do we have capacity, you think?
We have had capacity to make a few minor changes, as you know, the Salt Creek experience this last 12 months.
Yep.
That would be my short answer. Leanne, you want to come up to the speaker again, though, please? That's the one.
I just wanted to confirm that where you've got multiple property or houses on the one assessment, they'll now be charged the multiple bin charge, which is not something that was occurring previously.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to them, some of my problem would be not so much a problem, but those who did fall into the multiple property, multiple bins, possibly fit into some of the, this third and fourth dot point. They now have an opportunity which they didn't really have.
That's right. Understand. Okay, councillors, is there any further debate around item 8? Your closing, councillor.
Close the debate.
Thank you. As I put item 8, I put the motion around the rubbish service. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Payment of rates, item 9. The recommendation there, councillors. Someone move that way, please. Councillor Qualman. Councillor Bland is the seconder. Any discussion around that? Being none, closed. Thank you.
Right.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 10, 21-22 rate capping. There's a recommendation, councillors. Councillor Roundtree, you're moving. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ling is the seconder. Discussion, councillors online?
I'm good.
No, from the mover. Seconder seems happy from here. Any councillors wish to add to the debate? We'll close. Councillor Roundtree.
Closed.
Thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 11, declaration of the regional landscape levy for the two separate boards that we are in, or regional. Are they boards anymore? What are we? What do we call them this week? They are boards. Thank you. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Bland is the mover. Is there a seconder? Councillor Lang, thank you. Any discussion around them? They are as prescribed. There being none, you'll close, councillor.
Closed.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously, sorry. Yep. Number 12, council authorisation of rate rebates. There's a recommendation there around this. So I move that way, please. Councillor Arthur. Is there a seconder? Councillor, I'm going to take you, Councillor Taylor, as the seconder. Is that right? Nod, please. Thumbs up,
Yes.
very good. Councillor Roundtree, you wish to speak to it? You got a question? No, you want to be a seconder. Councillor Bland, you have though.
I have a question, and I'm just asking in relation to, now I've lost, Narung Progress Association, have a number of properties. One of the properties, and I'm not sure if it's listed on here now, but I would like some clarification at some point to ensure that it's not what was the golf club.
There's some tidying up there around what was the golf club.
Just check that because we did take it off previously, or I think we did.
Yeah.
And it was being used for agistment.
Yep.
So therefore it was being utilised. So
Used for commercial purposes. Yep. Certainly.
Much
We can
I'm
just
happy
check
to
that
do.
out. Deal with that. Councillor Coleman, you got a question?
Yes, I have, Mr Mayor, or clarification. I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, that the rebate only applies to the actual rate itself, but they still have to pay for CWMS and curbside pickup.
Yes, this has been raised with me in the last few days around our football clubs. Yep. So the other ones are different charges, but this is in relation to our council rate.
Yep.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay. Councillor Arthur, you get to close.
Closed.
Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Those against? Carried unanimously. We finished the agenda. The end, councillors. Thank you for that, for our, what I call our budget meeting. Councillors, I'd like to thank the staff, particularly we've got considerable Leanne, Jane, everyone, because we've got a considerable amount of new staff, and to bring together this budget this year, I know it's a bit delayed, and I'm sorry we couldn't go out to the public in the meetings like we would have liked. But I'd like to thank everyone for bringing together a budget which also shows us having a small surplus at this stage, and I'm well aware that we're still in the throes of spending a considerable amount of federal government grant money. The burden on the organisation has been quite high to actually fit that properly, and we've still got probably another full year of delivering all the projects we're aware of. We're allowed to talk about the Meningie Aero Club, are we, or is it embargo? I think we couldn't. But we continue to search for grants as much as possible. At 2:55.
I missed that last bit. Is the meeting closed?
Meeting's closed, councillor. I'll just let Ashley
Thank you.
off the mics unless you want to speak to us.
No. Thank you.